When 6-year-old Jaylen Carter slipped away from the woman gripping his wrist at a crowded Atlanta hotel lobby and grabbed the jacket of a man whose neck tattoos and diamond pinky ring screamed danger, the boy whispered 5 words that turned a charity gala into a locked-down crime scene. "They're selling 5 me tonight." What happened next involved a ballroom held hostage by one man's cold fury, a kitchen standoff with 3 armed traffickers, and the rescue of a child who'd been stolen from a Houston foster home 11 days earlier. The Marquise Grand Hotel in downtown Atlanta was hosting its annual Children's Heart Foundation Gala on a Saturday evening in mid-November. Crystal chandeliers, $500 a plate dinners, men in tuxedos, and women in designer gowns pretending to care about underprivileged kids while really networking for their next deal. Damon Silence Crawford was only there because his accountant insisted. "You donate $2 million a year to children's charities," Patricia had said. "You need to actually show your face at one of these things. It's good for the legitimate business image." So here he was, 52 years old, 6 feet 3 inches, 240 pounds of muscle that hadn't softened despite the decades since he'd retired from the life. His custom black Tom Ford tuxedo cost more than most people's monthly rent. The diamond pinky ring on his left hand caught the light with every movement. His neck tattoos, elaborate script that read Crawford on one side and Legacy on the other, peaked above his crisp white collar. His hands bore the evidence of his past, tattooed knuckles spelling out silence across both fists, earned back when he'd been the man you called when you needed a problem to disappear quietly. Damon had built his empire in the 90s and early 2000s. Atlanta's underground had answered to him. But when his daughter was born 16 years ago, something shifted. He'd looked at that tiny face and realized he couldn't be the monster anymore. The transition to legitimate business had taken 5 years and cost him friends, enemies, and a chunk of his soul. But Crawford Holdings now owned 23 commercial properties, a construction company, and a restaurant chain. The old reputation followed him like a shadow. People still whispered when he walked into rooms. The FBI still sent agents to his charity events, pretending to be donors. Former associates still called him Silence, even though he'd asked them to stop. Tonight, Damon stood near the bar, nursing a whiskey he didn't want, counting the minutes until he could leave without Patricia lecturing him about networking. That's when he felt the tug on his jacket. He looked down. A small boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, stared up at him with eyes too old for his face. The kid was dressed in an expensive little suit that didn't fit right, like someone had bought it without bothering to check his size. His skin was ashy, like he hadn't been properly cared for. His hair was freshly cut, but his fingernails were bitten down to nothing. A nervous habit that spoke of constant fear. The boy's small hand gripped Damon's jacket like a lifeline. "Please," the boy whispered. "Please, mister. They're selling me tonight." Damon's blood turned to ice. He'd heard a lot of things in his life. Confessions, threats, pleas for mercy. But nothing had ever hit him like those 5 words from this child's mouth. He crouched down slowly, bringing himself to eye level with the boy. His knees protested. He wasn't as young as he used to be, but he ignored them. "What's your name, little man?" "Jaylen. Jaylen Carter." The boy's voice was barely audible over the gala chatter. "The lady brought me here. She said someone's going to take me tonight, and I'll never see my brother again. Please, I don't want to go." Damon's eyes scanned the room, predator instincts activating for the first time in a decade. "Which lady, Jaylen? Point to her, but don't make it obvious." Jaylen's eyes flickered toward the left side of the ballroom. "The one in the green dress, with the man in the gray suit. They're pretending to be my parents, but they're not. They took me from my foster home. They took 4 of us, but I'm the only one left. 4 children. This boy was the only one left. Damon felt something dark and familiar rise in his chest. Something he'd buried when he'd gone legitimate. Something that whispered that some problems still needed to disappear quietly. Jaylen, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Damon's voice was calm, steady, the voice he'd used when giving orders that couldn't be questioned. You see that woman over there? The one in the red dress with the gray hair? Jaylen nodded. That's my wife, Lorraine. I'm going to walk you over to her, and you're going to stay with her. She's going to keep you safe. No one is going to sell you tonight or any other night. Do you understand me? Jaylen's eyes welled with tears. Promise? Little man, I'm Damon Crawford. And when I make a promise, God himself couldn't break it. Subscribe now, because what happens next proves that sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is exactly who a child needs. Comment where you're watching from. This story will remind you that evil exists, but so do the men willing to stop it. Damon walked Jaylen across the ballroom, his hand resting lightly on the boy's shoulder. He felt eyes on them, the woman in green tracking their movement, the man in gray reaching for his phone. Lorraine saw them coming. After 28 years of marriage, she could read her husband's face like a book. Her smile faded when she saw his expression. Lorraine, this is Jaylen. He's going to stay with you. Don't let him out of your sight. Don't let anyone take him. Anyone. Lorraine looked at the boy, at her husband, and understood immediately. She'd been married to Silence Crawford long enough to know when something was very, very wrong. Come here, sweetheart. She extended her hand to Jaylen. Do you like chocolate cake? They have the most wonderful chocolate cake at the dessert table. Jaylen looked up at Damon. You're coming back. I'm coming back. I just need to have a conversation with some people first. Damon turned and walked toward the woman in green and the man in gray. His stride was unhurried. His face was calm. But everyone who'd known him in the old days would have recognized that walk. The walk of a predator who'd found his prey. The woman in green saw him coming. She grabbed her clutch, said something to the man in gray, and they both started moving toward the service exit. Damon didn't speed up. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number from memory. Terrence, main ballroom, Marquis Grand. 2 targets heading for the service exit. Woman in green dress, man in gray suit. They're trafficking children. Don't let them leave the building. Terrence T-Bone. Washington had been Damon's right hand for 30 years. He was supposed to be retired too, running a car wash in Decatur, but he still answered when Damon called. And tonight, he happened to be parked outside, waiting to drive Damon home. How many we dealing with? Unknown. At least these 2, possibly more. The boy said they took 4 children. He's the only one left. Silence on the line, then cold and hard. Understood. Damon ended the call and followed the 2 targets through the service exit into the hotel's back corridors. They were moving fast now, almost running, weaving through confused kitchen staff and waiters carrying trays. The woman in green kept looking back, her face pale with fear. Good. She should be afraid. Damon pushed through the kitchen doors and found them cornered. The service exit was blocked. T-Bone's massive frame filling the doorway, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. 2 more men Damon didn't recognize flanked him. T-Bone had made calls of his own. The man in gray reached into his jacket. I wouldn't, Damon said quietly. The man's hand stopped. Here's what's going to happen. Damon's voice carried across the kitchen. The staff had frozen, sensing something dangerous unfolding. You're going to tell me where the other 3 children are. You're going to give me the names of everyone involved in your operation, and then you're going to wait here until the police arrive. The woman laughed, a nervous, desperate sound. You don't know who you're dealing with. We have protection. People in high places. Lady, I'm Damon Crawford. He let the name land. Watch their faces change as recognition dawned. I spent 25 years being the thing that people in high places were afraid of. Your protection means nothing to me. The man in gray went for his gun. T-Bone moved faster than a man his size should be able to move. The gun clattered to the floor. The man in gray crumpled, clutching his wrist. The children, Damon said. Where are they? The woman broke first. They always did. There's a house, Marietta, 1847 Pinewood Drive. The auction is at midnight. There are buyers coming from names, all of them. She gave him everything. The buyers, the suppliers, the corrupt officials who looked the other way. Damon recorded it all on his phone, while T-Bone kept watch. Then he called 911. The police arrived in 7 minutes. Damon had made another call first, to a contact at the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force, someone who owed him a favor from the old days. By the time Atlanta PD showed up, federal agents were already en route to the house in Marietta. The gala was chaos. Guests being questioned, exits blocked. The Children's Heart Foundation's PR team having a collective breakdown. The irony wasn't lost on Damon. A charity event for children had been used as a cover for selling them. He found Lorraine and Jaylen at a corner table, the boy working on his second piece of chocolate cake, while Lorraine read him a story on her phone. Jaylen saw Damon and his face lit up. You came back? Told you I would. Damon sat down heavily, feeling every one of his 52 years. Jaylen, the police are here. They're going to help find your brother and the other kids. But first, they need to talk to you. Can you be brave and tell them what you told me? Jaylen nodded solemnly. I can be brave. You taught me. I didn't teach you anything, little man. You were already brave. You came up to a stranger who probably looked scary as hell and asked for help. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen. An FBI agent approached, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a badge that read Special Agent Morris. Mr. Crawford, I'm told you're the one who detained the suspects and provided intel on the trafficking operation. I'm the one the boy came to for help. I just did what anyone would do. Morris's expression suggested she didn't agree. We raided the house in Marietta. We found 11 children, including 3 who matched the description of the kids taken with Jaylen. His brother is safe. Jaylen burst into tears, not quiet tears, loud, wailing sobs of relief that he'd been holding in for 11 days. Lorraine pulled him into her arms, rocking him gently. Terrence, Jaylen sobbed. I want to see Terrence. You will, baby, Lorraine murmured. You will. Damon looked at Agent Morris. The buyers. The ones who were coming tonight. We have the list you provided. Arrests are being coordinated across 6 states. This is one of the biggest trafficking busts in Georgia history, Mr. Crawford. She paused. I have to ask, how did a retired businessman know exactly how to handle this situation? Damon met her eyes. I wasn't always a businessman, Agent Morris, but I've always protected children, even when I was someone else. Morris held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The boy's foster mother is being contacted. She'll be here within the hour to pick up both brothers. In the meantime, would you and your wife be willing to stay with him? We're not going anywhere. If this story proves that some monsters become the heroes we need, hit subscribe and share it with everyone you know. Because Jaylen didn't run to a police officer or a security guard. He ran to the most dangerous-looking man in the room. And that man moved heaven and earth to save him. Terrence Carter arrived before the foster mother. He was 8 years old, small for his age, and when he saw his little brother, he sprinted across the hotel lobby and tackled him in a hug so fierce they both fell over. You're okay. You're okay. I thought I'd never see you again. I thought the man saved me, Jaylen said, pointing at Damon. The one with the tattoos. He promised, and he kept his promise. Terrence looked at Damon with suspicious eyes, the eyes of a child who'd learned not to trust adults. Thank you, he said carefully, for saving my brother. Your brother saved himself. He was brave enough to ask for help. I just answered. The foster mother arrived 20 minutes later, a woman named Gloria Hayes, who looked like she hadn't slept in 11 days. Because she hadn't, she'd been searching, calling, praying, doing everything a mother does when her children are taken. When she saw the boys, she collapsed to her knees and gathered them both in her arms, crying too hard to speak. Damon watched from across the lobby. Lorraine slipped her hand into his. You did good tonight, she said quietly. I did what anyone would do. No, baby. You did what you were built to do. You protected a child. The fact that you spent 10 years pretending you weren't still that protector doesn't change who you are. Damon thought about the darkness he'd felt when Jaylen had whispered those words, the cold, lethal clarity that had descended. He'd told himself that man was gone, but maybe that man had just been waiting for the right reason to wake up. Gloria Hayes walked over, both boys still clinging to her. Mr. Crawford, the FBI told me what you did, how you stopped them, how you found the house where the other children were. Her voice broke. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me. Just take those boys home and keep them safe. I will. I swear I will. Jaylen broke away from Gloria and ran to Damon, throwing his small arms around Damon's legs. Thank you for keeping your promise. Damon knelt down, his knees protesting again, and looked the boy in the eyes. Listen to me, Jaylen. What happened to you wasn't your fault. None of it. You were brave. You survived. And you asked for help when you needed it. That makes you a warrior. Don't ever forget that. Will I see you again? Damon looked at Gloria, who nodded with tears in her eyes. Yeah, little man, you'll see me again. 6 months later, the Crawford Foundation for Missing Children opened its doors in a renovated building in downtown Atlanta. Damon had funded the entire operation, a 24/7 hotline, a team of investigators, partnerships with law enforcement across the Southeast. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, 2 special guests stood beside Damon at the podium. Jaylen, now 7, wore a tiny suit that actually fit this time. His brother Terrence stood beside him, protective hand on Jaylen's shoulder. 6 months ago, Damon said into the microphone, a little boy walked up to a stranger at a fancy party and asked for help. He didn't know if I would listen. He didn't know if I was safe. He just knew he was in danger and he had to try. He looked down at Jaylen, who beamed up at him. That little boy's courage saved not just himself, but 11 other children. His bravery exposed a trafficking network that had been operating for years. And his trust in a stranger who, let's be honest, probably looked pretty scary, it reminded me why I spent so long trying to become someone different. The crowd laughed softly. The Crawford Foundation exists because of Jaylen Carter. Because every child deserves someone who will answer when they ask for help. Because every child is worth protecting. And because sometimes, he paused, his voice roughening, sometimes the people who look the scariest are the ones you need the most. Jaylen tugged on his sleeve. Damon leaned down. Can I say something? Jaylen whispered. Damon adjusted the microphone lower. Jaylen stepped forward, suddenly shy, then found his courage. When I was really scared, I looked for the strongest person I could find. My mama, my real mama before she died. She told me if you're ever in trouble, find someone strong and ask for help. I saw Mr. Damon and he looked really strong and really scary. The crowd laughed again, but I was more scared of the bad people than I was of him. So I asked, and he saved me. Jaylen looked up at Damon. He told me that when he makes a promise, God himself couldn't break it, and he was right. He kept his promise. He found my brother. He stopped the bad people. And now, he helps other kids too. The boy's voice got quiet. I think maybe scary people aren't always bad. Sometimes they're just waiting for someone to need them. The applause was deafening. 2 years later, the Crawford Foundation had helped recover 147 missing children across 8 states. The trafficking network exposed the night of the gala had been completely dismantled, with 43 convictions, including 2 state senators and a federal judge. Damon still got calls in the middle of the night, law enforcement agencies requesting his consultation on cases that needed his particular expertise. He always answered. Jaylen was 9 now, living with Gloria and Terrence in a house that Damon had quietly purchased for them. The boy called every Sunday, updating Damon on school, on his grades, on the karate lessons Damon had insisted on paying for. I got my orange belt, Jaylen announced during one call. That's my warrior. Next one's yellow, right? Yeah. Sensei says I'm really good. He says I'm fearless. You've always been fearless, little man, since the day I met you. Mr. Damon? Yeah? I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to help kids like you helped me. Damon was quiet for a moment, thinking about who he used to be, the things he'd done, the people he'd hurt, the decade he'd spent trying to erase that man. But maybe you couldn't erase who you were. Maybe you could only point it in a different direction. Jaylen, let me tell you something. I wasn't always a good man. I did a lot of things I'm not proud of. But the night you grabbed my jacket and asked me for help, that was the night I finally understood why I'd been given all this strength, all this power, all these years of learning to be dangerous. Why? To protect kids like you. To be the monster that fights the other monsters. That's what I am now. That's what you made me. I made you. Yeah, little man, you did. By being brave enough to ask, you gave me a reason to be someone worth asking. The Marquis Grand Hotel still hosts the Children's Heart Foundation Gala every November. But now, there's additional security, background checks on every attendee, protocols for identifying children in distress. And every year, Damon Crawford sits at a table near the bar, wearing his custom tuxedo, his tattoos visible above his collar, his diamond pinky ring catching the light, watching, because he knows now that predators hide in plain sight. They dress in expensive clothes and donate to charities and smile for cameras. They count on polite society to look away, to not get involved, to mind their own business. But Damon Crawford has never been polite society, and he's done looking away. If this story reminded you that asking for help is brave, that the scariest looking person might be your salvation, and that some monsters spend their lives atoning by hunting other monsters, subscribe, share, and comment below. Because somewhere right now, a child needs someone to notice, someone to listen, someone scary enough to make the bad people afraid. Be that someone.